Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Freedom Network. We're really happy that you joined us. Also joining us today is Frank Walsh. You know Frank, he's right here on this station. He does talking tunes and sports rap. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, just in case some of my viewers don't watch your show. We can give them a quick little synopsis of who you are.
Well, I doubt that. I thought everybody watched our show, but anyway.
There might be one or two of them.
Yeah, there might be one or two missing. But anyway, as you mentioned, I host and co-host the Talkin' Tune Show, and I sports rap with Michael Wigdor and Michael Hammond, who's in the booth today. And I do that for fun, but in my real life, I do recruiting, and I'm an executive recruiter and a human resources consultant, and I work for small, medium, and large companies, trying to help them find good employees. And
it's got to be a tough racket.
It's a tough racket in this economy.
You must be waiting for a new president, huh?
It is. Yeah. I am still licking my wounds from the last election.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's tough.
Today, folks, we're going to talk about gun control. We're going to try to talk a little bit about the minimum wage. Hopefully, we're going to have time for that. I got a ton of stuff on guns. I don't have a gun with me now. Don't worry about it. It's okay, Frank.
It is okay. Okay, I was just going to move over here a little bit.
No, you're okay. I did want to remind everybody, make sure that you keep on emailing. We've been getting emails. We'd love to get them, and we're really happy with all the responses. There's John and Tim. You guys have really been emailing us a lot. You've been giving us a lot of good show ideas. Don, of course, we get all your stuff, and everybody else. So that's timogary@gmail.com. You can get on to Twitter, and you can see us right on Twitter at Freedom Network. We'll put that up on the screen so you can get the right information. And you can also, you're going to be able to search us on Facebook at the Freedom Network and find us there as well. So a lot of different ways to contact us, and please continue to do so. We really enjoy it. We like to hear your thoughts, and we reply to every email that we get. I'm on there all the time. So you email me, you'll definitely get a response. So, topic, guns.
Guns.
There's a lot of guns out there. There's a lot of people on both sides of the issue. I'm not 100% sure where you stand on it, and I like that. Maybe we're close, maybe we're not.
Okay.
Either way, the Second Amendment, it's there, it's in the Constitution.
Right.
It's part of what makes us. It's as important a piece of the Constitution as anything else that's in there. Mm-hmm. There are the Federalist Papers. I don't know if you've ever read the Federalist Papers.
Not since high school, probably.
Very interesting stuff in there. And basically what they do in the Federalist Papers, if you haven't read them, and you can search them, just go right online, just like Federalist Papers on Google or whatever you like to use, and you'll find a plethora of stuff that really defines, and that's what they did in those Federalist Papers. They really defined what they meant. So we always talk about the Constitution being a living, breathing document. What does it really mean, and that kind of stuff. But what's interesting is a lot of that's outlined right in the Federalist Papers. We don't really need to interpret. We don't need to let it live and breathe because the information is right there for us. James Madison really did a nice piece on the Second Amendment. And he says that the reason that the right of the people is in there is to prevent a militia, or the militia, from being able to have a coup against the government. And we've talked about this here before. Mm-hmm. That's why they put the people in there. The right of, yes, it's a well-regulated militia. Yes, it's the people. What do you think about that?
The people bearing arms, you mean?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I think gun control is a big issue, and I really don't think that there's a right or wrong answer for it, because for every person whom you please, you're going to displease somebody else. Mm-hmm. As far as being able to carry arms, if you look at it in terms of the Second Amendment, I believe everyone should have the right to bear arms. I have no problem with that. That people should have guns for their own protection, their sport, for whatever they want to use them with, as long as it's within the law.
Okay.
I think the problem I have with gun control is when it starts spreading into other issues. Yep. Will gun control solve crime? Will gun control, solve crime? I think basically that's it. And will it? I have a hard time with that. I don't think that gun control is the way that it's being proposed these days is really the solution. But do I believe people should have the right to bear arms? Absolutely.
Okay, so we can agree that the Second Amendment's there. It's there for a reason.
Yes.
And what's really interesting is and like you just alluded to, I mean, it does bleed into other issues.
It does.
It does make for interesting conversation.
It does.
I don't look at it as this one likes it and this one's upset about it. It's the law. I don't like that the speed limit's 65.
It's
but
the law.
that's the speed limit. That's what I'm going to do.
Exactly.
You know, they toss around a lot of numbers. 30,000 annual gun deaths, I read online this morning. What they don't tell you, though, when you watch the mainstream news, is that 19,000 of those are suicides. So, you know, if you want to kill yourself, you're going to kill yourself, whether you have a gun or whatever the fact is.
Exactly.
A knife or jump off a building. Suffocation is actually right up there, asphyxiation, that kind of stuff. But it's a number one choice in suicide is with a gun, and that's because if you're going to kill yourself, you don't want to be in pain. So you blow your head off, and that's the end of it. That number really needs to be removed from when they say that 30,000 people were you know, killed gun deaths. It's really not. It's probably about, I don't know, 70% untrue when they talk like that. And you know, what's interesting, Frank, is that they like to throw stats and figures out. Now you can go online and you can find any stats you want. Like they'll manipulate them one way or the other. And one thing we really try to do here is go on the computer and get these numbers and those numbers from the left, from the right, all over the place, and then really try to maybe get a baseline for what reality is. They constantly will tell you that it's for the children. And in, you know, recent history, we've had a lot of problems where people have gone crazy in schools, shooting people, and it's disgusting. It's not the gun's fault.
Exactly.
It's the person that's wielding the gun.
Exactly.
But I'm going to tell you something. Traffic accidents are actually the number one cause of child-related deaths, 14 and under. Where's Obama? Do we ban cars? What do you want to do? I mean, what are we going to do here? It's life. It's a dangerous world out there. We have a lot of regulations with cars. People have a constitutional right to own a gun. They don't have a constitutional right to drive. They don't have a constitutional right to have a knife in their pocket.
That's a privilege.
Why don't we go after some of the things that may actually make a difference? I know that when my son was small, little guy, I was nervous, first child. I went to the police department and had them help me put that seat in the car because I wanted to make sure it was safe. Things like that, I could understand if we want to have some legislation, protect the children, because children can't protect themselves. No kid at that school could have protected themselves. But people are really worried about Obama taking their guns. Do you feel in this environment that there is a movement to remove guns from people's hands?
Yes, I do. I think that there is, and I think that it's much too broad. I think that it is much too broad. Again, if you go back to the basic premise that it is legal and it is an amendment to carry a gun, you know, it's going to take a massive movement to change that. Amendments in the Constitution don't get changed.
Right.
And there's really no way that they're going to be able to remove everybody's guns. They might limit them, and I have no problem with limitations. I think that, you know, the assault weapons, you know, weapons of mass destruction that they call them anything that you want. Those, I can see them taking them off the street. Handguns, sport guns, people who collect guns, I have absolutely no problem with that. And I think that what Obama is trying to do is go a little bit too far to the left and try to, you know, almost use this as a political move. It's kind of, he's jumping on the bandwagon. We've had these terrible tragedies, Sandy Hook, we've had the theater shooting out in Colorado. You know, every day you hear something about it. And every time it seems that they make these movements when these tragedies happen.
Of course they do, and that's the catalyst.
And it becomes a political,
yeah,
it becomes
a
very
political
political. It becomes a political football.
And everybody wants to pass it around, everybody wants to put their touch on it, but you know, like even you touched on, regulation makes sense to a degree, but it's only, no matter what you ban, Frank, you could ban it doesn't matter what you ban. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You ban, drugs are illegal, but I can go right down to Stoughton.
Absolutely.
In this town, I could go probably acquire any darn drug I want to go
Absolutely.
acquire.
And I was thinking on my way over here that if you ban guns, if all of a sudden we woke up tomorrow and they removed the Second Amendment and imposed martial law and said we're taking everybody's guns, what did they do when they banned alcohol back in the Prohibition days?
Sure.
What does everybody do?
Look, when you
they're opening speakeasies, they're opening stills, they're still drinking,
Frank,
in
when
some
you have
cases
gun
more
laws,
so.
all you're doing is you're limiting the rights of people that follow the law. So I don't care if somebody wants to have a fully automatic rifle. It's the law-abiding citizen that would be regulated out of that. You're going to go to a hotbed of drug cartel or this or that or a criminal. They're going to have them anyway.
They'll have them anyway. But I would still have a hard time with someone who would have a weapon of mass destruction, semi-automatics,
But
full
what's the difference,
magazines,
Frank? I mean,
30
at the end,
shots.
But Frank, at the end
I would
of the
have
day,
a hard time with
at the
that.
end of the day, one life is got to be as valuable as 100 lives.
Absolutely.
So if I have a handgun and I can walk in and shoot somebody, or I have a larger gun, it's interesting because I had sent, I had been looking at some pictures and stuff like that, and there's a litany. I don't know if I had sent it to Tim, but if I did, I'm sure he's going to get it up there, where we talk about, we use guns to protect the president. We use guns to protect this. We use guns to protect that. We use guns to protect this. Then when it comes to our schools,
Can't put 'em in
and we put a
schools.
sign up that says no gun zone. So we use a sign of no guns. We should have armed guards at the schools is what we should do. We should have people there that can take care of our children. That's where my money needs to be spent.
I would not disagree with you there.
All
I
right,
would
check
not
this out.
disagree with
In
you there.
Florida alone, since all of this has been going on, we know that a lot of people are now getting gun permits that didn't have them because they're starting to say, whoa, wait a minute. I always felt comfortable not having a license to carry or an FID card or a rifle in the house, whatever it may be, because I know I had the right to. I have the right to say whatever I want, but I don't stand on the corner and scream things. You know? Now that there's a feeling that those rights may be curtailed, in Florida, for example, they have just passed their 1 millionth gun permit. And we're seeing that all over the country. People are getting more guns. By having this discussion, by threatening, which is what they're doing, to take the guns away, they're getting more guns out there, which I think is ironic. I think it's kind of comical. And I still believe that the more armed people are, the less you're going to have these nutcases. I mean, the guy that went in to that school and shot those people, if there were no guns and they were banned, he would have burnt it down. He would have went in with knives. He would have went in with blow guns. He would have went in with. He absolutely.
I think he would have
positively
gone
would have
in with a
killed people.
gun because he would have found a gun somewhere. They're out there. If you stop making guns right now and eliminated manufacturing of guns, there are millions and millions and millions out there, and it would take forever in order to remove all of those guns.
Absolutely. it
There is
would.
no way
You know-
that someone could not get a gun if they really wanted to.
Frank, I was on factcheck.com. Murders in 2010 at the lowest rate since 1981. This was in 2010. And these are gun murders. Gun ownership is way up now. It's well over, statistically, 75%. We could almost, and I'll get into the numbers, we could almost arm 8.5 to 9 out of 10 people in this country. We could arm them with just the guns that we have right now. Gun manufacturing is up over 6 million a year that they're manufacturing now in the United States. Gun robbery is down to 45. 45 is pretty low, for every 100,000 incidents. So for every 100,000 robberies, you've only got 45 people with a gun coming in to commit the crime. It reeks of control. I'm going to get into some good stats, different countries, what they do, what has happened in the past in the world that we can point to. Because if you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. We're a young country. We're young.
Right.
Comparatively to other countries, we're very young. And to say, well, that would never happen here, I used to say that about a lot of things. And I watch the news every day, and I'm like, wow, that's happening here. So there's some big issues there. Number of homes with guns was dropping okay? It was actually dropping until the government started to talk about gun control. So what this tells me is that people, American citizens, they don't all want guns. They don't all want to have a gun on the hip and walk around and racks of guns on the back like you may see in Texas. That's not what every American wants, Frank. But when you start to say, I'm going to take that right away, if you take that logic and you start to now want to define, well, this is an assault weapon. You mentioned weapon of mass destruction. I don't think a gun is a weapon of mass destruction.
Well, what I mean by that is that multiple chambers, they can go out and they can spray and kill 10 people in 3
Absolutely.
seconds.
And I just always come back to the one person that is killed, or murdered, I would say, with a gun, is just as important as the 9 other people that were sprayed with a different type of gun.
I agree.
I don't really get into this division of this is a good gun and this is a bad gun. The guns are not good nor bad. They're just guns. It's the
Correct.
people that have the guns that are the problem.
Correct.
Factcheck.com, USA has the highest rate of gun ownership in the world. With that, statistically speaking, that's why we have more homicides with guns. It's simple math, folks. I mean, this is what I mean. When you go, you can say, well, you know, we have so, if you have more of anything, you're going to have more of anything. So if you have more cars on the road, you're going to have more accidents. If you have whatever it is, you can pick and choose. You're going to have more. So take the simple math that I put down here. Guns per 100 people, all right? We are up at about 80 in the United States right now. In Yemen, they're at 50. Yemen and the United States, interestingly enough, are 2 countries, and I couldn't find any others. I'm sure there's a couple out there that actually have in our Constitution, in their laws, that you actually have the right to own a gun in Yemen, which is interesting because you wouldn't maybe think that there were other countries out there. The Swiss, the Swiss, I mean, there was an old joke, why are the Swiss neutral? Well, you'd be neutral too if your best weapon was the Swiss Army knife, right? But 45 people out of 100 in Switzerland own a gun. So Canada, Germany, and France, about 30 people. So of course in these other countries you'll have less incidents because there's just not as many guns there to have them. Doesn't mean that the guns are bad. If you want to scale it down, and I love math, so if you scale it down far enough, you're going to find that for every gun, you're going to have X amount of accidents, X amount of murders, and when you bubble up that number and you have more guns, you're going to have more of that kind of stuff. Any thoughts on that?
I agree with you, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's hard to dispute those numbers, and but I think where I come from this is I agree. It's not the guns, and I think that it's the people behind it, and I think that the guns are really not the issue. I mean, you can talk strictly about the guns and beat those numbers to death, but I think where we fall down with that are the people. What do we do to prevent people from turning those guns, which are harmless in themselves, into weapons that murder people? And that's where I go with that. I have no dispute that people can own guns.
It's an absolute mental health issue, Frank.
It absolutely
is. It's a mental
is.
health issue.
And,
if you want to,
it mushrooms into so many different areas. And how do you fix that? It's almost a conundrum.
Well, it is.
It's a conundrum.
There's no way to separate the two. Sitting here as an American, I have the right. Now, it fries me like you don't believe that I got to go to the chief of police and beg him to have a gun. The chief of police should have absolutely nothing to do with it. There should be regulations that are set up, because if I'm a chief of police and I'm anti-gun, I can effectively have a no-gun zone in my town. That's against the Constitution. So I, right off the bat, think that when we talk about gun legislation, I think we should strip that right from the chief of police. The chief of police should have nothing to do with it any more than these are the requirements laid out by federal law. These are our state requirements, and the state requirements cannot supersede the federal requirements. Correct. Because it's a constitutional issue that its brain is from the top down.
So what you're saying, as long as someone meets the criteria,
that's right,
they should be able to get a gun.
They should be able to get a gun.
I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that.
You know how many guns we got, Frank? I looked it up this morning. 270 million guns are legally owned in this country by Americans. That's enough to put a gun in about 9 out of 10 Americans' hands, like we had said before. A question I had earlier that I was thinking is,
of all the gun crimes that get committed, what are the statistics of those guns being owned by the user or illegal guns?
Well, it's interesting because I was going to get into that. You've got an immense amount of crimes that are committed. Now, we talked before about statistics about
Right.
how many, and like I said, you can bend them almost any way you want,
Correct.
depending upon what criteria you want to put into your search. At the end of the day, 9 out of 10 times when you see something on television that's not suicide, not self-inflicted, not an accident, because there's a big difference between an accident and a murder.
Correct.
I mean, you've got people that can cut somebody's brake lines or do something to their car crashes, that's murder. If I hit somebody, God forbid, in my car, and I'm of sound mind and I'm not drunk or anything, that's not murder, or it might be manslaughter. There's a big difference there. So I went back and I looked through just a little bit of history to see what governments that have really gone after gun control in a big way and what's happened. And it's interesting because you look at the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, okay, the target, Armenians, 1 to 1.5 million murdered by the government. Gun control law goes into effect 1886 through 1911. In that period of time, they disarmed their people and they killed over 1.5 million of them, just about. The Soviet Union, 1929 to 1953, anti-communist and anti-Stalinist, 20 million. 20 million, estimate, because they don't have actual facts on that, 20 million were murdered. These people would not have been murdered if they didn't take their guns away. Nazi Germany occupied Europe, 1933 to 1945. Jews, gypsies, anti-Nazis, anybody that didn't look the way that Hitler wanted you to look. 13 million estimated people. What's the first thing that they did? Disarm them. China, ongoing, 20 million estimated people. These people, by and large, would not be dead if they could stand up for themselves. The list goes on and on. Cambodia, 1 million people. Okay, they targeted educated people. That's who they were targeting. They took the guns away from them. You go through, and what's interesting, in the Soviet Union, after the Red Army victory in their Civil War, firearm laws were considered to be important. They were consolidated into criminal code. Unauthorized possession of a firearm would be punishable by hard labor. In 1925, they made a law to unauthorized possession of a firearm punishable by 3 months of hard labor, a fine of 300 rubles. Now, at that time, that's a highly paid person. So basically, if you have a gun, we're going to take your freedom away. We're going to take your money away. So what do people do? They don't have guns. Frank, it goes on and on. Altogether, about 20 million people were murdered, worked in death or slave labor camps, deliberately starved to death by Stalin. These people would have been able to fight back if they didn't allow the guns. And there's a reason I'm going through all this, and I'll pull it together afterwards. Germany. After Germany's defeat in World War I, fearing with good cause efforts by communists or Marxists and that kind of stuff, the right to overthrow the government, they ordered a surrender of all firearms. So that law was in place before Hitler even got there. After he got there, he expanded it. But before he even got there, because so when the Nazis took power in 1933, the 1928 gun control laws, it served their purpose. They wanted to take the guns, especially away from the Jews. If you're Jewish, you could not own a gun. That was the first thing to happen. We all know what happened to the Jewish people. They couldn't defend themselves. They did and they tried, but obviously they were going to be overpowered. It absolutely, positively makes no sense to me. 4 days after Hitler took down Austria, all right, March 1938, the Nazis finally enacted their own firearm laws. Additional controls were laid on the 28 law. Persons under 18 were forbidden to buy firearms or ammunition, special permit for handguns, and most importantly, Jewish people could not own guns, right? You see the pattern. You see what lines up. These people that were killing the other people, though, in concentration camps, but not just in concentration camps, because they were walking the streets and they were just, popping people off. The victims were unarmed. They were bewildered. They knew the fate, but you know what? I'd rather not die today. Maybe I can live till tomorrow. So you go along with these things. In 1943, the Nazis attempted to commence a liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto. Now, we've all heard about those stories. As they moved in, some of these Jewish people had guns, and it took them days, I believe, to really get a handle on that and kill those people and put that uprising down. It was the only place that the Jews were able to put a foot down against that son of a gun. And the only reason they were able to do it, folks, was because they had guns. And they were illegal guns because they couldn't even own them.
But look who they were fighting against, though. I think you had mentioned it a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that if we were talking handguns
Yeah.
and just your average gun ownership, you had mentioned the word overpowered. I mean, I think what you had said about you may not die today, you might live until tomorrow.
Sure.
But, I mean...
And this is what I mean, Frank, when I talk about different kinds of guns. Let's ban this one and not that one. Let's ban this one and not that one. Well, you know what? If they didn't have some machine guns and they were sitting there with revolvers, it probably would have been over a lot sooner. So, China, same thing. Mao, just like Hitler, he inherited gun control from his predecessors. So it was very easy. So these are things, and we've talked about these things, and what we like to call them here on this show is that slippery slope.
Absolutely.
So
that's one of my favorite expressions.
You want to mess around with what they call assault rifles or automatic or semi-automatic. And we're going to have a feature and get a little education on that in a few minutes. But it's all chips and pieces. I don't think that Obama necessarily wants to take every gun out of everybody's hands. The problem here, and the facts, folks, state it. You can print this stuff right up. Right up. Gun control and genocide. Search it on your computer. You'll come to the same
But are we talking
stuff.
about, I think that all of that notwithstanding, I think it's almost an unfair comparison. We're not talking about in this country the government overthrowing us. We're not talking about genocide in our country. We're not talking about
it. But when you were talking about it, okay, because you have to understand that in these examples that I'm giving you, right, there were gun control measures already on the board. This was their slippery slope. This was in the 20s and in the 30s, leading up to what Germany ultimately did and the final solution with Hitler and these things. This was already happening. It was already going.
But do you think that thing would happen here? Do you think that we're ultimately leading there?
Do you think that in 1990,
Did they think that would happen?
They think that would happen
No,
there?
no.
So do I think it? No, Frank, I don't think it. But I feel that we all would be a little bit soft to think that it couldn't happen here. And one of the reasons it can't happen here, Frank, is because everybody's got guns. Because 9 out of 10 people we have that many guns out there. So nobody's coming to take away all the Jews or all. It's not going to happen because we're going to stand up for each other. But if you slowly say, well, Frank, you're okay with your handgun, but we're going to take that rifle. And Gary, you can't have that semi-automatic rifle, but you can have this single type of a shooter.
But I think it's going from that to a quantum leap to think that all of a sudden the government is going to start taking over and the government is going to become communistic. Or,
let me ask you a question, Frank. What happened in World War II in this country? What did we do to our own citizens that were Japanese? We rounded them up, took their guns, and put them in camps.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to sit here and say that the U.S. government would never take rights away from the citizens because we have an example in recent history.
There are examples,
of where they did
but
it.
that is somewhat of a specious argument. That's very similar to saying, your mother's saying, eat all your food because there are people in China dying. There are people in Africa not eating. That's somewhat of a specious argument.
But there are people that were. You can find people today that know that their parents were put into camps. They were Americans. For crying out loud, Frank, they were Americans. They weren't even here illegally with visas, because if you were, then forget it, you were right.
Okay, so if there were people like that who did have guns, right, and they would resist, Do you think that they may have been shot, they may have been killed?
I don't think that they would have
Or
done.
they would have put up a fight?
I think they would have put up a fight.
And then what would have happened? They
Well,
probably would have been overpowered and
they
then
may have
killed,
been.
versus because whatever rules and regulations or whatever statutes that were there to give the government reason to put them away,
Yeah.
which ultimately changed, because after that, when they did their homework and they found out that these people were valid or had, were not a threat to the government or were
Yeah.
not a threat to the, to anyone else, they were eventually released.
But you
and
can't-
it's almost like the usual suspects. I mean, if there is a murder going on, what's
Yeah.
the first thing they say? Get the usual suspects. And
Frank,
they're going to
absolutely.
round
I
up
mean,
every
we-
rapist,
you
every
can't take
shooter, every
variables,
person.
But we can't take variables and turn them into facts. The question posed was, would the government ever do something like that? And yeah, so they did it to this many people. So yeah, it wasn't a big deal. But to say that they wouldn't do something on a larger scale is completely ambiguous. You can't make the statement that they wouldn't, because
But
A,
I
they've
think
done it on
I
the
think it's
smaller
a
scale.
stretch.
But hang on.
I think it's a
well,
stretch.
Frank, it may be a stretch, but if that never happened, or if we were sitting here and it was before that happened, and I was on this very stage right here with you, and we said, gee, they may just take the Japanese and put them all in like concentration camps like they have over in Europe. You could say the exact same thing. And there's absolutely, positively no proof, because it's intangible, that the government would not impose that. Look, we had a snowstorm here, okay? A snowstorm with 30 inches of snow in Stoughton, and you couldn't leave your house and your car?
You had a problem with that?
I had a huge problem with that. I had a huge problem.
What were the conditions of that? They said that they wanted to clear the streets or
Sure they
safety,
did.
et cetera, et
That's,
cetera.
and they would say the same thing. We need, for the safety of the American people, we got to take the Japanese people and we got to bring them over here. It's the same game. They play it constantly. The only reason we haven't seen it as much is because we're a young country. You fast forward 500, 600, 1,000 years from now, we have no clue what would happen. But we can take preventative measures so that it doesn't happen by not disarming the population in this country.
I don't see the direct correlation. I really don't.
I mean, to me,
I don't really
it's
see
as
it
linked
because-
together like this. The fact of the matter is
And I
that
think it's a leap of logic. It's a leap. It's a stretch.
I don't know how much
You
of a
know,
stretch it is,
it's a
because they've
stretch.
done it, Frank. They've done it. They've done it on a small scale, and people sat by and they let it happen. There's an old saying: they come for your neighbor, and you don't speak up for him. And they come for your minister, and no one speaks up for him. And they come for the school teacher, and no one's going to speak up for him. Eventually, they're going to come for you, and there's going to be nobody left to stand up for you.
But first of all, the word eventually is, first of all, there's eventually, and I would say then, what is the likelihood of that? What is the likelihood of that?
Frank, I don't
what
know.
evidence do you see where, if you were to take, and start connecting your dots, and then extrapolate that into the future
I
and
mean, we
say,
could
this is
definitely
going to the
connect-
conclusion.
Frank,
now,
you
if
could connect
you
some
want to
dots.
go ahead 500 years,
Go ahead, yeah.
500 years, let's say, well, maybe, is that likelihood there? Yes, and it's one thing, it's difficult to disprove or argue a negative. It's difficult to do that.
Well, you can look at things that happen right here today, like the fact that I can be fined or imprisoned, and if I leave my house and there's 30 inches of snow on the ground if I'm in my vehicle. You can look at the fact that in this country today, the government's reach is so in your everyday life. You have,
I'll give you that. I don't
there's
disagree
very
with
little
that.
that you can do. So we talked about the slippery slope. When you're at the top of the slippery slope, Frank, nothing looks like it can happen.
Correct.
But when you slide down it, it happens, and then it's too late.
I don't disagree with
Look,
that.
you talked
I don't
about,
disagree with that.
You talked about the different types of guns and that kind of stuff. We have a neat feature that I want to play that Tim put together, and it's going to talk about semi-automatics, fully automatics. What are they? What do they mean? Get a little education on that. We'll watch that. We'll come right back, and we'll keep talking.
Hello there, Jeff with the Big Shooters channel. Thanks for tuning in. I was asked to do a video quite a while ago. I've had a little bit of time, finally got around to it, for Modern Musket. They're a fantastic Facebook page, a wonderful cause, And their entire mission statement is kind of educating people that the firearms we use today are the equivalent, the modern musket, if it will, of the firearms that were used when the Bill of Rights was originally penned. And I think they're onto something. Today we're going to show you why this is absolutely not an assault weapon. Stick around. So, the term assault weapon gets thrown around pretty loosely, and I know what it means, and most of you know what it means. But you have to remember that when dealing with politicians, most of these people have rectal cranial insertion disorder, and they don't know what it means. They don't know which end of the firearm or a projectile comes out from. So words mean things, and we have to be very specific when we're talking to them. The entire concept of assault weapon came from the late 1980s and early 1990s when Josh Sugarman of the Violence Policy Center found out that he could confuse the general public, the average person, into believing that when they were speaking about semi-automatic firearms, at the time a 100-year-old design, semi-auto, one squeeze of the trigger, that those firearms were equivalent to modern machine guns just by calling them assault weapons and getting the help of the media a little bit with some imagery. So whenever they were speaking of these semi-automatic guns, they would show some video clips of some full auto guns firing, and it clicked. And before you know it, 1994 rolled around, we got the assault weapons ban. Most of you know that these were just cosmetic features that banned firearms. Had absolutely nothing to do with the action. These were guns that were just like Grandpa's 100-year-old hunting rifle, with some plastic furniture and some add-ons, like a bayonet lug, or a muzzle brake, or a flash hider, or a pistol grip. And somehow these magically transformed these guns into something special that had to be more heavily regulated than the other firearms. Now, the real kicker is that most of the firearms that they wanted to regulate under this new scary assault weapon class type of firearm is that the guns regulated were typically ballistically inferior to firearms that were not regulated. They didn't bother with the 30-06 Remington 742s. They didn't bother with these guns because they knew that no one would look at that gun and associate it with the scare tactics that they were trying to use. The ones that they banned, most of them, were 7.62 by 39, equivalent pretty close to a 30-30, and 223, a very small, typically 55 or 62 grain projectile rifle. And if you look at the ballistics on those, they're not even close. But let's not confuse facts with fiction and what buys votes, and that's what the politicians vote on. Now, Josh Sugarman and Sarah Brady and this whole group of gun grabbers all band together and got on this bandwagon. And again, we had the 1994 ban, and you might be asking yourself, hey Gooba, why are you bringing this up now? It expired in 2004 on a federal level. Well, it did. But here's the problem. We're going into an election season. Absolutely everything that happens involving a firearm, good, bad, or otherwise, is going to be blamed on you and on me, and we haven't done anything, and assault weapons, especially the ones that are not real assault weapons that don't exist. So today, we're going to give a reminder, kind of a shout out to all of you who know people that say, well, why do you need an AR-15 or why do you need an AK-47? We're going to give them some simple answers. Assault weapons, real assault weapons, very highly regulated, full auto, banned for individual ownership since May 19th of 1986. There really isn't much you can buy out there for under $10,000 anymore. And the last I checked the crime stats, people didn't spend 10 grand on a gun, go through 8 months worth of paperwork to go rob a 7-Eleven for $35. It doesn't happen. It's all symbolism over substance and smoke and mirrors, and it doesn't exist anywhere but in their heads for buying votes. So let's show you the difference between an assault weapon, a select fire firearm, and a semi-automatic firearm that looks like an assault weapon. This is a Core 15, semi-automatic, 223, One shot every time you squeeze the trigger. This is not an assault weapon. I'll demonstrate. One shot. Exciting stuff, huh? No. It's not an assault weapon. One shot per squeeze of the trigger. That last firearm is the one that they like to talk about when they show the imagery of the machine gun, or imply or insinuate that that's what they're talking about. Machine guns are not what they're talking about at all. They're talking about semi-automatic firearms that look like machine guns. Like this. POF USA, P416 machine gun. This is an assault weapon, and like I mentioned before, very highly regulated, and none have been manufactured since May 19th of 1986 that a citizen or an individual can even own. I'll demonstrate what a real assault weapon looks like. Pretty much the same? Nah, nothing like it. The other gun can't do this. That is an assault weapon, not the first one. And this is not what they're talking about when they construct their legislation. How about this gun? Is this gun an assault weapon? In its current configuration under the federal legislation, no. It's a Ruger Mini 30, fires 7.62 by 39, same cartridge that the AK family of firearms use. Not an assault weapon. They couldn't pass this one off as an assault weapon and ban it because too many people would identify that it looks just like Grandpa's guns. And it does. Now, in their bastardized versions of their legislation, should you put a folding stock on it, large capacity magazine, flash hider, a bayonet lug, pistol grip somehow, then it's magically transformed into an assault weapon. But I'm here to tell you, it is not. No matter what it looks like, this is how it functions. That's it. One shot per squeeze of the trigger, regardless of whether there's black plastic furniture on it or wood. This is not an assault weapon under any circumstances. How about this gun? Is this an assault weapon? Look at it close. Can't tell if it's an assault weapon. Neither can our legislators. So they like to demonize them with the cosmetic features. I'll fire it, and you tell me if it's an assault weapon. Well, still up in the air. One shot per squeeze of the trigger. Let's move it to here. Now let's try it. This is an assault weapon. It's a full automatic, not the guns they're trying to ban. That's a real assault weapon, and it's not even on the list, not even on the radar of the politicians. The politicians are trying to ban the semi-autos that look just like it. Pathetic, isn't it? So let's summarize. When the politicians are talking about an assault weapon, they're not talking about an assault weapon. It's double talk. They're talking about a 100-plus-year-old design, just like your grandfather's old hunting rifle, that isn't a problem, never has been a problem. They're trying to make people believe they're talking about firearms that are already highly regulated, that are true assault weapons. They're masters of deception. So my point with this whole video is to give you some ammunition to explain to people who are not involved in the industry, that see the misleading news reports and see the misleading lying statistics, and ask you with sincerity, well, why would you want to own that? And we could do an entirely new video on not living in a needful society and not having to give a reason to own anything. This is only in comparing semis to full autos. But you can let them rest assured that in Congress's infinite wisdom, on a voice vote on the Hughes Amendment, the machine guns were banned from manufacture for individual ownership as of May 19th of 1986. And those are not the firearms that the politicians will be speaking about the next time they find opportunity in it. And that's it. Modern Musket's whole gig is to teach people that regardless of the firearm you have, it's simply the modern version of the musket, which was the firearm of the military in the day of the writing. That's all. And it makes all the sense in the world. If the people that would like to ban certain types of firearms because they didn't exist when the Bill of Rights and the Constitution was written, well, then you ask them how they would like their media to be limited to standing on a soapbox in a corner and yelling, or what they could do with a quill pen, because that's what they had in the day. They didn't have the broadcast television. They didn't have the massive printing presses that they have today. They didn't have the internet. So if my rights are somehow invalid because they didn't exist during the writing, then their entire industry is absolutely invalid. It's as simple as that. Well, thanks for watching the video. I hope that you learned a little from it, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hope I didn't bore you too much. I know it wasn't a real action-packed kind of thing, but it's pretty important. We're getting close to an election season, and they're going to pull out all the stops. So I want everybody to be armed with the most important weapon of all, and that's information. Check out the guys at Modern Musket. Their Facebook page, Modern Musket, is terrific. It's full of information, and they're great people, and they're doing it for all the right reasons. If you liked our video, please subscribe, unless it's on this side. Tell your friends about it and share it in all your social media areas, and we'll get back to the exciting videos very soon. Till next time, have fun and be safe.
Now that's interesting stuff. It's very interesting, it's very informative, and maybe it puts things in a little bit of a perspective. We've been going back and forth about guns and about slippery slopes and all this kind of stuff. And one of the great things about America is that you can have these kind of spirited discussions. Now, I don't take from you that we are light years away politically. Just sitting and talking to you before the show, I feel like we're probably more common ground between us. We
probably do.
But as you can see, the issue of guns is very, very passionate. It's passionate on both sides. Make sure that you let me know what you think, and you email me at timogary@gmail.com, because I want to hear what you think about this. Where do you want to go? I mean, what do you want to do with a government that consistently over 300 plus years has taken more and more and more and more and more control, has circumvented the Constitution at many different levels and many different ways? It is a variable to say that they might come and whatever. It is a variable. But it's a variable, it's a contingency. And anybody's going to tell you that if you don't plan for those contingencies, you're going to fail if something should come up. Cool. Do you think that if the Jews were armed in Germany, or forget the Jews, if everybody was able to be armed in Germany, you probably would have had this much of a problem.
It would have been less,
Frank,
and there
one
would
of
have
the
been
reasons
fewer
they
people
say that
killed.
America is they say unattackable. Now, of course it's attackable in today's day and age, and it's attackable because you've got nuclear weapons, you've got dirty bombs, you've got weapons of mass destruction like you talked about and all that kind of stuff. You've got that. But when you talk about Red Dawn, right, people coming, airplanes coming down, what's going to happen is you're going to have the citizens will be your first responders. The citizens will be the ones to defend the country. So whether you're defending it from the government itself or whether you're defending yourself from outside forces, people need to be able to have and keep guns. They got to be able to have them.
I do not disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I have no problem with people owning guns. I have no problem with that. Again, if they meet the criteria.
Okay.
I have
And that-
no
and that's a whole
problem
nother
with
question
that.
because-
And as far as the government control, yes, it is a slippery slope. And another thing too, I would throw it back to the people. The people who make these decisions, the president, the elected officials, who puts them there? We do. We do. So I think it becomes incumbent upon the voters to put people in there
boy, you're
who
right
would
about that.
potentially
No.
support their path
Yep.
and bring them in there. But there are people who put these people in here, and that's another show that we could get into. But people put these politicians in there. So either they do not do their homework when they vote,
Yeah.
or they become victims of their not doing their
Well, you do.
homework because they vote.
No, you do. You get the government you deserve.
Well, you get the
You
government
get
you
the government you
deserve and the
deserve.
one that you put up with and the one that you put
Absolutely.
in there.
That's
so if
why-
there are people out there who were pro-guns, pro-this, pro-that, and you vote for them, you know, you can't almost have it both ways and say, well, hey, I'm putting you in there for this, this, and this, but I don't agree with you now. So, you know, you almost can't play it both
No, Frank,
ways.
you can't have it both ways, but you can have it the way that if, regardless of who we put in there to make a decision about a million different things that a president or a politician may make, there are certain decisions that are not theirs to make. And in my mind, gun control is a decision that is not theirs to make. You can control the people that are going to own them, but that's another whole slippery slope.
Correct.
And we talk about it being a mental health issue, but who's to say that I'm not insane because I'm on TV ranting and raving about gun control, so they're going to say, gee, you can't have a gun anymore. Well, that's BS. I'm sorry, but
I agree.
there's absolutely positively. So even with that, there has to be some limitations as to what the government can do. I talked about the police chief. I don't know the police chief in Stoughton. I'm sure he's a very nice human being. But you know what? You should have absolutely no bearing on whether I can own a gun or not. It's not your right to decide if I can exercise my right. Plain and simple.
I do not disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. And again, as far as the slippery slope goes, I agree with you because where does it stop? And we could take the show in a million different directions
right.
about the slippery slope. I mean, what are they going to ban next? You know, if someone
That's
goes
right.
out and we have a fight and I go outside and I whack you with this coffee cup, are they going to ban plastic coffee cups next?
I'm sure there'll be
because
people
they'll
that would want
consider
to.
they'll consider that a
Right, there'll be people
consider
that
that a
would want to.
weapon. You know, where do you draw the line with things?
There's a group of people in this country, and unfortunately they're a very vocal group. They motivate people to go to the polls that are very into control.
Absolutely.
And one thing America has traditionally been against is control. I mean, the government's there, keep me safe, give me roads to drive on, give me a rail system, a highway system, give
me a job.
protection. You know, but the government...
Opportunities for job.
Opportunities for job is okay because
That's what I meant.
The government
Opportunity
has
for
no
job.
place in creating jobs.
Correct.
There's going to be jobs created through government just because that's just going to be a byproduct of government.
Correct.
We've exhausted our time here. Make sure you check Frank out. Thank you very much for coming
My
on.
pleasure.
Check him
Thanks
out
for
on
having me.
Talking Tunes. Check him out on Sports Rap. This guy's all over the place. Make sure you get us, timorgary@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter. Tim will flash the stuff up on the screen so we can get to you. This has been another exciting edition of the Freedom Network. Tune in next time. We'll keep it going.